My name is Morris, and I'm an Al-Anon.
Hi, Morris.
Let us open this meeting with a moment of silent meditation, followed by the Serenity Prayer. Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to express things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We welcome you to the Al-Anon family group portion of this meeting, or of this conference today, and hope that you will find in the fellowship the help and the friendship we've been privileged to enjoy. We who have lived with or have lived with the problem of alcoholism understand as perhaps few others can. We too were lonely and frustrated, but in Al-Anon we discovered that no situation is really hopeless, and that it is possible for us to find contentment and even happiness whether the alcoholic is still drinking or not. We urge you to try our program. It has helped many of us to find solutions that led to serenity. So much depends on our own attitudes, and as we learn to place our problems in their true perspective, we find it loses its power to dominate our thoughts and our lives. The family situation is bound to improve as we apply the Al-Anon ideas. Without such spiritual help, living with an alcoholic is too much for most of us. Our thinking becomes distorted by trying to force solutions, and we become irritable and unreasonable without knowing it. The Al-Anon program is based on the 12 steps adapted from Alcoholics Anonymous, which we try little by little, one day at a time, to apply to our lives, along with our slogans and the Serenity Prayer. The loving interchange of help among members and the daily reading of Al-Anon literature thus make us ready to receive the priceless gift of serenity. I've asked Karen D. to read the 12 steps for us today.
Hi, y'all. I'm Karen. I'm a grateful Al-Anon, I think. The 12 steps of Al-Anon. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscience, contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Thank you.
I've asked Kathy W. to read the do's and don'ts of our program.
Hi, my name's Kathy, and I am a grateful member of Al-Anon. The do's and don'ts. Do learn the facts about alcoholism. Do talk to someone who understands alcoholism. Do go to Al-Anon, Alcoholics Anonymous, or to an alcoholism center. Do develop an attitude to match the facts. Do take a personal inventory of yourself. Do maintain a healthy emotional atmosphere in your home. Do encourage new interest in activities. Do pass your knowledge of alcoholism on to others. Do seek spiritual help. Do get a sponsor. Don't preach or lecture. Don't argue with a drunk alcoholic, or a sober one for that matter. Don't have a holier than thou attitude. Don't use the if you love me appeal. Don't make threats you won't carry out. Don't hide liquor or pour it out. Don't resent the method of recovery. Don't expect immediate contented sobriety. Don't try to protect an alcoholic against alcohol. and don't be discouraged by the mistakes you make.
I've had the opportunity over the last day or so to meet our speaker and to spend some time with her and to enjoy visiting about the disease of alcoholism and how it affects the family members. And along those lines, I'd like to read a passage out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, page 116. It's the portion entitled To the Wives. At first, some of us did not believe we needed this help. We thought on the whole we were pretty good women, capable of being nicer if our husbands stopped drinking. But it was a silly idea that we were too good to need God. Now we try to put spiritual principles to work in every department of our lives. When we do that, we find it solves our problems too. The ensuing lack of fear, worry, and hurt feelings is a wonderful thing. We urge you to try our program, for nothing will be so helpful to your husband as the radically changed attitude toward him which God will show you how to have. Go along with your husband if you possibly can. And I can't imagine a better invitation to our Al-Anon program than our speaker today, Larcine.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Larcine. I'm a very grateful member of Al-Anon. I want to thank you very much for having me here today. It's an honor and a privilege to get to be here, and I've just had an absolutely fabulous time. Everybody's been great. Diane and Nancy picked me up at the airport. I always love it when they send alcoholics to pick up an Al-Anon. It's just you got to be there. It's just a fun adventure. First, they lost their car right away, and it just kept getting better on from there. And Morris has just been an absolutely fabulous host. I've just really enjoyed myself, and the speakers that you have just been wonderful. I'd never heard either Mark or Mike before, and they both just gave fabulous, wonderful talks. It was a real privilege to be here with them. And you're going to hear Clara tonight, and as you've heard said, she is just such a kind spirit, and I know you will really, really enjoy it. Being another female person, I got the speaker ribbon on, and I should have a dime for everybody. Someone said, "Oh, are you Clara?" And I had someone say to me last night, "Oh, you just don't look like I thought you would." And if you see Clara right there, you could see there's a little bit of subtle difference here between her and I. So, but I'd love to be Clara. And I know Sandy tomorrow. I've had the privilege of hearing him speak many times. And you guys just, you've gotten your registration money already's worth, so I got no worries about that going on. Sometimes it's really difficult, a little bit intimidating being the only Al-Anon speaker at an AA conference. It's kind of like being a corpse at an Irish funeral. No one expects you to say much, but they can't have the party without you. And, the token Al-Anon speaker, I got to... Many occasions, Smitty, Bob Smith's son, was an Al-Anon person, and I was privileged to be with him at a lot of conferences. And I remember the very first time I met him, and of course I was a little intimidated because here's Bob Smith's son, right? And we were sitting at a table together, and he leaned over to me, and he goes, and he's Al-Anon too, so he leans over to me, and he goes, "Doesn't it just piss you off that they have us talking during the golf tournament?" So that's kind of the deal. You come to these things, and it's Alcoholics Anonymous, and then in little tiny print somewhere it says, "with Al-Anon participation," And that just personally pisses me off. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but, boy, when alcoholics get arrested for drunk driving, they want some Al-Anon participation, don't they? Yeah, boy, yeah. Who are we calling on the phone right away? So... And I very much enjoyed the comedians last night. They were funny guys. No Al-Anon jokes, though. So what's the matter with these guys? I was really kind of a little disappointed. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love Al-Anon, and I have great respect for both programs. The fact that we can joke around with each other and laugh with each other is total testament to me about how this program works. And and though I very much understand the separation from Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon, and that they are two different programs, I think when we get the opportunity to come together at a conference like this and join the two fellowships, that to me is just the real icing on the cake. We got sick together, and I think it's absolutely fabulous that we can come in rooms like this and get well together too. And it's just a real honor and a privilege, to be able to be here with you and share that. There's some Al-Anon jokes I know that aren't very kind, but there's one I particularly like, and and I like it because with any joke, if there's a little bit of truth to it, that even makes it funnier. And my favorite Al-Anon joke is, why does an Al-Anon make love with her eyes closed? Because she can't stand to see the alcoholic having a good time. And again, I think there's a little realm of truth in that, and I think it's great. And to be able to laugh at those kinds of things, it's amazing to me. A lot of times I get mistaken for alcoholic. I have no idea why. It just happens. And my husband says it's because I've lost the look. And it took me 25 years to lose the look, but then it took me 25 years to get it as well. So I'm grateful to the program for that. We had a great gal who has since died and gone to the big meeting in the sky, but she started coming to Al-Anon like in 1955 or something. And Martha would always share with us when she went to her first Al-Anon meeting, that was her question. How do I get this look off my face? That was the deal for her. And if you're an Al-Anon, you know exactly what I'm talking about, how I'm affected by the family disease of alcoholism. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like for me today. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. My dad was a master sergeant in the Army, and that made me automatic corporal of my family from the very beginning. I have always had rank. And I was just the way it is. My husband jokes that I came out of the womb carrying a clipboard and wearing an armband, and he's not too far off the mark. And that's just the way it is. When I was in school, I was always room monitor, cafeteria monitor, playground monitor, because the teacher knew if she left, and she left me in charge, and anybody misbehaved, I would write down their name, and they would be reported. I would write down their name and what they did, and I don't know what to tell you. It's just a gift I have, It just works for me. I'm organized. I like rules and regulations. Like I say, my dad was a master sergeant in the Army. We had lots of rules and regulations, and it worked for me. It didn't work so well for my sisters or my brother, but it worked absolutely fabulous for me. I like it. I like knowing what you want me to do. I love instructions. If you're on an airplane and that airplane is going down, you want me in the exit row. This is the person you want. Because everybody will get out in an orderly fashion. Anybody pushing and shoving, back of the line, buddy. That's where you're going. So this is where you want me to be. And again, like I say, it's just, and I have learned in the program too, we are all very individual people here, and for me, there's nothing really wrong with, being disciplined and enjoying rules and regulations and liking things to be organized. If that works for me, that's fabulous. But I've learned to embrace who I am and what I am, and that's okay for me. What I've learned in this program is it's not okay for me to force what I think is right on anybody else. I get to live my life by the principles that I set down for myself, and I get to allow other people in my life, especially the people that I love the most, they get to live by the principles that they need to live by. And I'm very, very grateful to the program for that. But anyway, I grew up in this house. My dad was a master sergeant in the Army. My dad drank every day. I had absolutely no idea that there was a problem drinking in my house because I grew up with a dad that drank every day, which for me means it's perfectly normal because that's what I learned. And we lived with other military families, and lots of dads drank every day. I mean, it was just what went on. A lot of dads got drunk every day. I couldn't even distinguish between it. Was just you started drinking, and I could never understand quite what happened. Like we'd have these huge picnics on Sunday with all these other military families, and it would always start off so wonderful, and everybody's having a good time, and they're barbecuing hot dogs and ice cream, and we're doing sack races and all these kinds of wonderful things. But then as the day progresses, all of a sudden people start getting a little bit louder, and people start pushing other people, and the next thing you know, the MPs are there, and the moms are taking everybody home, and the day is done. And I never equated the consumption of alcohol with that. I thought it was something to do with the sun or something. I don't know. It was just, it's just, when you're a little kid, but it was all the dads. So again, it was absolutely normal behavior for me. When I was new in Al-Anon, I still do, but when I was new in Al-Anon, I went to lots and lots of open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it says in our Al-Anon literature that you should learn all you can about the disease of alcoholism, and I know no better place to learn that than in open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember one of the very first meetings that I went to, there was a speaker that evening, And again, I don't know that this is really what he shared, but what I heard him share about his whole talk was about alcoholism, the family disease. And he described alcoholism in the family as having a rhinoceros in your living room, but everybody pretends it's a coffee table. This is just, this was his description of it. And he perfectly described the house that I grew up in. Because, if you've grown up in an alcoholic home, many things go out the window, but one of the first things that does is any kind of verbal communication. And so, my mom would get to the part where she could tell where my dad was ready to have one of his alcoholic explosions, but she could never say to any of us kids, okay, nobody talk, nobody do anything, because your dad's ready to blow up, because then my dad would blow up. So she would talk to us facially, and again, if you grow up in an alcoholic home, when your mom's, that all means a lot of stuff. There's a lot of meaning there, and it is, and so all of us kids would just look down at our plate. Nobody would try and do anything. But if you've got an alcoholic that's ready to explode, it's going to happen. Nothing is going to stop that. And there'd be some minor infraction, and somebody'd scrape a knife on a plate or spill something, and boom. All hell would break loose, and everybody, dinner would go flying, everybody would get a spanking, everybody's got to go to bed. It could be 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We all have to go to bed. The kids, my mom, the dog, everybody's got to go. It's just a rule, that when that happens, that's how it goes down. And then the next morning, you wake up and you get up the courage to go into the kitchen for breakfast, and you walk down the hallway, and there's my dad drinking his breakfast beer, and it's just like, good morning, what do you want for breakfast? And no one ever says, gee whiz, what was that about last night, Dad? Gee whiz, how come you had to throw dinner on the floor? How come you had to hit everybody? What was that about? Just the rhinoceros just goes back to being a coffee table again, because you just want it to be different. Maybe today will just be different and this will go away. And that is just the absolute perfect description of the house that I grew up in. Now I want you to know my dad, he ended up dying from alcoholism at the age of 55, and he died the death that they talk about in the big book, the total insanity and death. And I cannot even repeat to you from this podium the last words that my father said to me. They were so foul and so vulgar, I won't even do that. My dad was tied up, and it was just not a very pleasant experience at all. And when my dad died, I had been coming down on for a very short amount of time. I started coming down on in 1981. My dad died in June of 81. My dad died in October of 81. So I wasn't to the loving and kind part of the program by any stretch of the imagination when my dad passed away. And and I would like to tell you, that it was a very sad thing, but I want you to know that, when the doctors came out and told us my dad had died, it was like my sisters and I were like, ding dong, the witch is dead, da da da, da da. Because our whole life had been this terrorizing deal with my dad and his drinking. My dad was a very violent alcoholic, and again, the family disease of alcoholism and how we're all affected by it. And I had a lot of issues with my dad, no doubt about it, and I did a lot of work with my sponsor about this. But I really believed that when my dad died that day, that when they told us it was it and we were singing our song because we really believed this reign of terror was over. That when he died, there was going to be no more crap, no more bad feelings, no more anything. And, and what I've come to learn is that, is just because the alcoholic goes away doesn't mean, how we're affected by the family disease of alcoholism doesn't mean that I'm not unaffected anymore. And I share this with you because I think it's really important, because if you're thinking about killing your alcoholic and you think that's going to fix it, we'd be having these meetings in San Quentin right now. I mean, that would just be the deal. If that fixed it, that's where we would all be right now. So don't go there, because I'm here to tell you that isn't going to do the deal for you. But anyway, I had a lot of issues with my dad even afterwards, and it just really, I couldn't understand it. And I did a lot of work with my sponsor about, all this stuff that happened as kids, and I did all the writing, and I did everything my sponsor asked me to do to deal with this stuff. And but still, it didn't seem to matter what. Whenever I would think about things that happened, it would just stir up all this unwholesome emotion in me and just make me just feel crappy. And I don't know how you are, but I have a family of my own now at that point, and when I feel crappy, the whole family gets to feel crappy, because it's just another rule I have. Don't ask me where they come from. I just make them up and I go with them. So that's a rule I have. And it bothered me, because I didn't want to keep bringing this stuff into my own family. And so one day I was talking with my sponsor about it, and she told me, you've done the step work on this. You've done everything I've asked you, and I'm really happy with what you've done there. She says, but we got to move out of what the problem is, because we all know what the problem is. You grew up in alcoholism. It's just what goes on. And I don't mean to make my situation sound any worse than anyone else's. If you grow up in the family disease of alcoholism, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But she says, in Al-Anon, what we're about solutions. We're about getting into recovery. We're about what we can do about what's going on right now. So she goes, I'm going to give you an assignment, and I know you're not going to like it, but anyway. And she told me that she wanted to go home, and she wanted me to go home, and she wanted me to think of something good that my dad had done. And at that point, of course, the negative disease of alcoholism never wants you to see any positive thing that's ever going on in your life, and I didn't think that there would be anything that I could think up of. But, one thing you need to have if you're going to come here and try this deal is you got to have some kind of willingness to take some kind of instruction from somebody else. And so I was willing, and I told her I'd give it a shot, but I did not honestly know that I could think of a thing. So full of anger and resentment because, again, the negative family disease of alcoholism is a very powerful thing in my life. And but anyway, I went home, and I don't know how long. It took me a week, 2 weeks, whatever it was. And I remembered that my dad taught me how to drive. And if you're going to, live in Southern California and marry an alcoholic of your own, you really got to have that skill. It's very, very imperative. And so I came back to her and I said, he taught me how to drive, and I'll always be grateful to my dad for teaching me how to drive. And she says, that's fabulous. That's all you need here. You just need this much of a window. One more time going from a negative to a positive, because that's what she wanted me to do. She goes, now instead, when you think about the things that happened and the things that make you so uncomfortable, I want you to replace that negative thought with this positive thought that your father taught you how to drive. I want you to just go from that place to this place. And it wasn't very long, I don't know how long before, I started doing that, and then I thought of a second thing that my dad did, and then I thought of a third thing that my dad had did. And then again, going to open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was learning about the disease of alcoholism, and what I came to learn was my dad was just a sick person, and that when my dad, on those few occasions when he was able to be a dad, that he was trying to do the very best that he could. I believe he loved me and my sisters and my brother to the best of his ability, sick alcoholic that he was. And anyway, and I don't mean to stand before you today and say, I kind of had this abusive childhood and my dad smacked us around a lot, but then my sponsor gave me an assignment and now everything is just as happy as it can possibly be, because that's how this friggin' program works. That is not what happened to me. What happened to me is my sponsor gave me a gift. She gave me the gift of forgiveness. And please never underestimate the power of forgiveness. Because it really wasn't about forgiving my dad. It was about giving forgiveness so that I could move on with my life and have a shot at a good life. If I want to hang on in the sickness, and that's what the active family disease of alcoholism wants you to do. Boy, it wants you to be a kid forever. Think about that crappy thing that happened and just keep living it over and over and over again. And what Al-Anon gives me in the gift of forgiveness is the opportunity to have a good life, when I can let that stuff go, because it's just the way that it was. It's how the disease of alcoholism wants it to be. It's not how my dad wanted it to be. I know that today, and I'm really, really grateful for that. But anyway, I grew up in this alcoholic home, and in about the I think we were like in about the end of the 60s we moved. And I'd been born in Europe, and we lived all over because we moved every 2 years all the time. And then we finally ended up coming out to California, and this was in the late 60s. And coming to California in the 60s, especially from the East Coast and the military and all of that, was like moving to Mars. I mean, because I grew up with so many rules and regulations about my entire flaming life, and then California in the 60s, no rules and regulations whatsoever going on here. And so we come here, and and my sisters and I start being able to date, and my dad had a lot of rules and regulations about dating, and we'd have to bring these little weenie guys home to meet my dad. And my dad's over 6 foot tall, and he's got one eyebrow he can raise like 6 inches off of his forehead. He looks like Satan himself standing there in front of people. And he would drill these little weenie guys, when we were going out on a date, where we were going, what time we had to be back, and what part of their anatomy he would remove if we were not returned in the virginal condition of which we left the house in the first place. Plus, you got to know my dad's a master sergeant. I don't have his voice will take the roof off of the place anyway. So, and I used to think that that's what all it was, but I was talking with my sisters a few years ago, and my sister was saying, well, the fact that Dad always had a hand grenade or a firearm on the table didn't help matters any either. But see, I kind of forgot about that, because when you grow up with your dad always having a hand grenade or firearms, it's like, your dad whittling or something, I mean, it's just normal behavior in this wacky house that we lived in. He never did anything with any of it. He was always going to kill you. That was like no big deal. And but I guess these guys were really intimidated because they always brought us home early, always shook our hand at the door, thank you, but nobody's worth this. It's just really, really hard to get a second date in my house, It just hardly ever happened. And And when I was 16, I met my husband. I should have known there was something really wrong with him because my dad liked him, and that never happened. And I went on this date with him and this other couple, and my husband's several years older than me. I was 17. He was like 23, 24 years old at the time. He'd been married once before, was back living with his mom and dad, which might have been clue number 2 to me that there was something wrong with them, but that went right over my head. And I remember we were going to go back to his house, and we were going to play, and we'd gone bowling, and then we were going to go back to his house, and he stops at a liquor store. And he says, okay, I'm going to go in and get something to drink. What do you like? Well, I am 17 years old, and I am a rule and regulation person. I follow this stuff because I have learned you keep your nose clean. You do exactly what the Sarge tells you when he tells you to do it. And so I tell him about the drinking laws in the state of California. So I tell him about the drinking laws in the state of California. I tell him he hears, I know he heard follow this, state California drinking laws in the state of blah, 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 blah. Because he went in and got a gallon of Red Mountain wine, if nothing else, to impress me what he can consume in sheer volume alone in this, with this one evening. And we go back to this house, and and I make up stuff all the time. This is my life. I mean, I don't like to ask a lot of questions. I just think up crap. That's just how I am. I call it stuff that's floating up in the universe. I just think it up, lands here, becomes fact for me, and I function upon it. I just kind of pick something out of midair, and okay, let's go with this. This sounds like a plan, and I make up rules all the time because it's really important for me to know where I'm supposed to go, what I'm supposed to do, and sometimes there's not an appropriate rule, so I rule life. I'm volume alone in this who I am. I just have to be a little bit more realistic sometimes about some of the rules I make up for myself. But anyway, I got a rule. I don't drink because I'm underage. But we go back to his house, and now we're playing this drinking game. Well, you can't win at a drinking game if you don't drink. And I have to win at a game. That's another rule of mine. Gotta win, gotta win, gotta win. So I can shift my rules. I have certain rules are higher than other rules. So, the winning went over the non-drinking rule. And so I drank some wine. It didn't take very much for me. I don't know what I had, half a glass, something like that. And I'm not a drinking person. And so I was pretty blotto with a glass of wine or whatever. And then I remember him taking me home from this date, and here he is at the steering wheel, and he's got his hands in the proper 3 o'clock position on the steering wheel, which tells me he's just perfectly fine. And I like this guy because he's unlike anybody I've ever gone out with before. I've always gone out with all these weenie little guys that are weenie like me, that are rule and regulation person, and here's this guy, and he's a hippie guy, and he's got a beard down to here, hair down to here, tattoos all over the place, drinking, does illegal drugs, huge violation of rules and regulations, but he's a fun guy. He's an absolutely fun guy. And my whole life, I've just been around all this negative, abusive, drinking thing, and this is a fun guy. So I immediately just decide, information from nowhere lands here, becomes fact for me. Not a problem with alcohol, not a problem. Because, I want you to know I've grown up with this. I'm 17 years old now. I know I am not going to marry anybody like my dad. That is not going to happen. I am not going to have this terror going on in my life. And what I know today is my husband isn't anything like my dad. He's the complete opposite of my father personality-wise, but are they both alcoholics? They both suffer from the disease of alcoholism. But I decide right then and there, he doesn't have a problem drinking because he's so much fun and he's so spontaneous, and I'm just so attracted to this because my whole life is you can do this, and then boom, it gets taken away, boom, because there's some minor infraction, some minor violation that's always going on, and my husband's just as spontaneous, let's go here, let's do this, let's have fun, let's just have a great old time. My husband and I pretty much started dating exclusively from that point on. It was really difficult to date my husband. Why? Because he couldn't remember my name. But if you're going to date an alcoholic, you can't let a little weenie thing like that hold you back. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? Just the tip of the iceberg. I know my name is weird, it's different, and I've never met another Larcine before. My dad told me that Larcine, my dad's very, very proud of his Scottish heritage. And he told me my name is the name of a town in Scotland. And, my dad, of course, has since died, been, dead many, many years now. And after he had died, and I was in Al-Anon for a while, I decided to research my name and find out about this Larcine Scotland. And I've Googled Scotland, written to Scotland. I've had friends go to Scotland. I have Scottish friends, and they have never heard of Larcine Scotland. And this pissed me off a lot, because that means my name is bogus crapola is some made-up drunk story, and I was very, very upset about it for a long time. many of my friends in AA knew that I was very upset about it. And then one time a friend of mine in AA, he came up to me and he goes, "Oh my God, Larcine, I found out Larcine, it is Scottish." And I was just like, "Oh, you're kidding me. What is it? What's going on?" He goes, "It's a Scottish word. It means father was drunk when daughter was born." And so I'm very, very proud of my name, and I thank Alcoholics Anonymous for giving me a definition and an identity. And again, one more time, the things that happen in these rooms, going from a negative to a positive, it's such an easy transition if you let it happen. If you let it happen, and people will take you there. They'll take you on that road if you let them. And but anyway. My husband and I started dating, and like I say, he's a big drinker guy, he's a biker guy, hanging out with all these guys, do drugs, all kinds of illicit activity going on here. And I never do drugs. Oh my God, huge rule and violation. I mean, I just wouldn't even, oh goodness gracious. And but it was fun. I liked being with the crowd because there's a lot of stuff going on with these people and bikes and drugs and all this stuff. And I'd be sitting in the middle of them and they're doing cocaine and all fights are breaking out and I'm there in my little pink sweater and hush puppy shoes drinking my little Diet Coke and they were always great guys to me. I mean, I know there was lots of problems and lots of issues going on with that group, but they were always nice to me. They referred to me affectionately as Mrs. Walton. And if that means anything to anybody here, if you date me back just a little bit, but that was the kind of life that that was going on, and I was just trying to be this really good girl in this situation, and what ended up happening is my husband and I dated for a couple of years, and what ended up for me is that I ended up getting pregnant, and I share this with you later on because when our life got really, really bad behind the drinking, I was sure it was because God was punishing me, because now I've broken the big rule and the big regulation, and this is the big punishment from up above. And I had to be in Al-Anon a while to find out if you're going to screw around and not use any birth control, you might just get pregnant. Just a fact of life. But boy, if you're sitting here and you're blaming God for the stuff that's going on in your life, you might as well walk out the door right now. If you think that that's the kind of God that's going on, then because what defense do you have against a God that's punishing you? What I know today is there's just consequences for choices that you make. That's really what it's all about. And the God that I've come to learn about in these rooms, it amazes me to no end. Because no matter who I've heard share or what's been going on, no matter how much in my own personal experience that I have mucked up my life and messed things up, every time I've gone to God, there's always been answers for me. Because that's the God that's out, that I have gotten in these rooms. Is just the God that just wants you to be happy, wants to have you have this shot at a good life. And you can definitely have that here. I know it for a fact. But anyway, this became a big deal for me. I don't care if it's a big deal for you. Huge deal for me. And first of all, it's a major violation of the rules and regulations. You're supposed to get married and then get pregnant. It's written out. You just can't get around that. And I don't like to get caught at any kind of violation whatsoever. And so anyway, my husband and I got married a month after our child was born. So if you ask me if I was pregnant when I got married, no, I was not. And so there you go. And but after we were married, occasionally I'd have to take my husband to a work function, and all the way to this work function I would tell him, now if somebody asks you what year we got married, you tell them blah, 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 so it works out in the chronological order I know you want it to work out in, so I look good. And I don't know how many parties you've been to, but I've yet to be to one yet where they go, Butch, it's nice to meet you. What year did you and Larcine get married? No one ever seems to ask that big question. And it was funny, several years ago we were at something and someone said, what year did you and Larcine get married? And he just looked at me like, oh my God, what do I say? What do I do? I think our kid was like 27 years old at the time at this point, and I told him I did a step on it. It's okay. We can be honest about this now. And but the first year I was in Al-Anon in Southern California, we do the Al-Anon Family Groups Convention, and that's our big deal every year. And we always do the deal where we get 2 adjoining hotel rooms, and we cram as many Al-Anon women in these 2 adjoining hotel rooms as we can. And the very first Al-Anon AFG convention I'm at, very first night, we're up in the room, and there's about 7 of us, and we're having the meeting after the meeting. And again, I don't know that this is what was shared, but what I heard all these women, sharing their deepest, darkest secret. And when it came around my turn, 7 women in the room, and I told them how I'd had to get married because I was pregnant. And it turns out, 7 of us in the room there, and 6 of them had to get married because they were pregnant. And we decided the 7th was the sickest because she married an alcoholic and did not have to. I mean, how sick is that? So, and one more time, you get to learn you're as sick as your secrets here. And believe you me, that secret was making me sick. That secret was making me sick because, again, the negative disease of alcoholism just wants you to sit there and live in the negative disease of alcoholism. And so what was happening as my husband was drinking and our life is getting progressively worse, and I feel like I'm stuck in a situation I hate, I start blaming this little kid that I had. Because if it wasn't for him, then I wouldn't be stuck in this marriage, and I could walk, and I wouldn't be in this situation. And again, how I'm affected by the negative disease of alcoholism, that it would let me blame a small child for the choices I made in my life. And that, how I'm affected by the negative disease of alcoholism, and I'm not even the person that's drinking. And I share this with you not because I'm proud of it, just so you know how I'm affected. I had a hard time with we become sick too, because I couldn't even see my own behavior. I couldn't even see it at all. But anyway, Butch and I got married. We had this kid, and I want you to know that absolutely positively the driving force behind my husband and I getting married was the birth of this child. I am not going to deny that. That is it. But I also want you to know that the day that Butch and I got married, that I loved my husband. I believe that he loved me, that he was sober that day, that we were both very sincere in our wedding vows, that we really did want to love and honor and cherish each other till death do us part, and do all the things that people who get married, that you want to take care of each other, that you want to be there for each other. But I'm here to tell you that it wasn't just Butch and Larcine that got married that day, it was also the family disease of alcoholism. And the family disease of alcoholism doesn't love or cherish anything or anybody. I'm here to tell you it means to tear your family apart any way it can, through the alcoholic or the non-alcoholic. It's totally irrelevant to that disease. And anyway, Butch and I got married, and up until that point, I'd never much discussed with him his drinking or his drug use. It just never kind of came up. I mean, I saw all this stuff going on, but it wasn't anything I didn't think I couldn't fix when the time came. And so the day after we got married, I sat him in the kitchen chair, and I told him the rules and regulations of our marriage. And I told him we get a babysitter once a month. And then we could go out and party and that, but that's it, because we got to save money, we got stuff to do, we got a kid, we got responsibility, we got obligations. Did he understand the rules and regulations of the marriage? He sat in the chair and he did this to me, which was affirmative. What I know today is he's so loaded, he's just doing this thing. And he heard the blah, 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 blah part. And I know that because day three of our marriage, he does not come home all night long. This is a huge violation of the rules and regulations of the marriage. Now, I want you to know I watched my mom for years do nothing, so I knew the silent treatment didn't work. I am proud to stand before you. My husband begged for the silent treatment. He never got it. Not one time. Boy, I was like one of those little dogs, when you walk in the door, just and I would just go after him, just craziness, and I mean, all he wanted to do was lay down and pass out. And I shared that one time from the podium, and Hank Johnson was sitting next to Butch, and he turned to Butch and said, "Butch, I don't think that's too much to ask for." But it was more than I could give him for sure, because I just couldn't let it go. I'd just be all over him, and he'd be passing out, and I'd be yanking him up and shaking him, and because I wasn't done yet, He jokes that I talk as fast as I do, because I only had so much time from when he came home to when he passed out to tell him everything it was, because by God, he was going to hear every word of it, and curse, oh my Lord, the words that would come out of my mouth, I can't even not believe it. And again, information from nowhere. Lance here becomes fact for me, because I was sure if I cursed with the right mothers and effers, like in the right order, like he'd have a spiritual awakening, or something. Thinking of crap all the time. Maybe this will work, maybe this won't work. One night he's passed out in bed, and I'm whispering in his ear half the night, "You don't want to drink, you just want to work and bring Larcine the check. You don't want to drink, you just want to work and bring Larcine the check." I mean, again, woohoo, try it, see what goes. And I'm thinking, this is normal. I think I'm smarter, I'm just, and that's just kind of how it turns into. I still am amazed at how quickly, everything just shifted up. How you go from loving someone and caring about them to becoming so obsessed with them, and then becoming this person that you don't even know who you are anymore. And it's such a subtle deal. It's just such a subtle deal. I love in our literature how it says how we become nervous and irritable without knowing it. Why? Because we try and force solutions. And that's what I was all about, just forcing solutions. Trying to take my square husband and fit him in this round hole that I was just sure I could squeeze him into if he would just do it the way I wanted him to do it. Because I didn't understand. I didn't understand why he would tell me that he loved me and he loved our son and he cared about us, yet he'd go off for 2 or 3 days or 3 weeks and not show up and not come back, spend all the money, put us in all kinds of precarious situations because I don't understand the disease of alcoholism. Because, see, I can drink or not drink. It's so irrelevant to me. And again, one more time, very dangerous for me. Information from nowhere. Because, see, if I can drink or not drink, then so can you. You must not love us. You must not care about us. You must not do whatever. I don't understand my husband suffers from the disease of alcoholism, and that once he takes the first drink, the deal is over for him. There is no more choice for him. But I don't know that. And again, lack of knowledge, what I don't know and what I'm afraid to ask or seek out. At least you think I don't know what's going on or I'm not a smart person or whatever. Because it's all about how it looks. That's how it became for me. It's all about how it looks to everybody else that's going on in the deal. And it just got progressively worse in our family. And I remember one time his friends, whom I affectionately refer to as scum of the earth people, these were drug dealers, and they called me up one day. And if my husband were, with me in Houston today and you talk to him, he would tell you that when he drank and used, he was a pig. There's no other word for it. That's his description. And I got a call from these people, and to show you how loaded and obnoxious and drunk my husband was at their house, they told me that if I did not come and get him, they, the drug dealers, were going to call the police. I mean, he was in bad shape. They didn't know what to do with him anymore. So anyway, I put on my cape and off I go to get him, and I get there, and I'll never forget this because it still warms me inside, just even to remember. But I remember, getting there, and then the drug pushers doing the Al-Anon Venetian blind thing, seeing if I've come there. And he was already out of their house. They'd pushed him in the bushes, and so I got him up, and he wanted to drive like he always did, but I just pushed him, and he landed in the back seat of the car, and I take him home, and I take our son upstairs to go put him in his crib, and I come down, and my husband's made the fatal mistake of getting out of the car without my help, and he's fallen on the ground. He's cracked his head open. Blood is gushing out all over the place. I'd like to tell you how concerned I was about him, but I am not, because again, it's all about appearances now for me. I just don't want anybody to see him. But now he's like 185 pounds of wet washcloth. I mean, I can't get him up. There's no way. So here he is bleeding out of his head. I've got him by the ankles, and I'm kind of leaping him up over the curb and down the sidewalk. And why we call these people normies, I have not a flaming clue. But this guy's driving down the street, this normie guy, and here I've got a guy bleeding. I'm hauling him down the sidewalk by his ankles, and the normie guy stops his car and says, "Are you having a problem?" Yes, I am. My husband's fallen and he can't get up. And so he gets out of the car and he helps me get him up. And again, I think up stuff because this is, okay, something's going on. I got to make up a lot of stuff, a lot of rules and regulations right up. Okay, injured head, he must be upstairs because that's where our bedroom is, upstairs. Not only do I have to get this guy in the house, I got to get him up a flight of stairs. And so now, of course, my husband is more conscious, and now the words are flying between him and I, and Mr. Good Samaritan no longer wishes to participate. And so we get to the top of the stairs, and that guy's out of the house like a flash, and I get Butch over to the bed, and now there's this puddle of blood on the bedspread. Oh my God, I want to kill him, but I don't want to get caught with blood on my hands. And so, but I'm hysterical. I call 911. I'm so hysterical, they don't even know what's going on. They sent a hook and ladder truck, paramedics, the police. They even got a hold of my mother. And I'm in the bedroom with the baby and my mom, and I'm crying, "Oh, my husband, my poor husband." And then the Redondo Beach police come in and they go, "Mrs. Gantner, your husband says he injured himself because you pushed him down a flight of stairs." And I told the Redondo Beach police I didn't do that, but if they'd prop him up, I'd be happy to push him down in front of the Redondo Beach Police Department. And they told me that wouldn't be necessary, and they cleaned him all up. And he's got a couple of, he's like 3 stitches or something, but he's too drunk to walk. So they got to take him by ambulance. I don't know how your neighborhood is, but my neighborhood with a hook and ladder truck, and all my neighbors were out front. And here comes Butch, and everybody in the neighborhood loves Butch because he's an easygoing guy. And he's out there and he's coming out on the gurney and they're all there. He's, "How you, Frank? How you, Joe?" And and they're all like, "Well, Butch, what happened?" "Larcine pushed me down a flight of stairs." Now, I'm the screaming banshee in my house, so they all believe it, of course, because they're just like, I can see, "Oh, poor Butch, what a mean, bitchy wife he has, and all this." But again, alcoholism, the family disease of alcoholism, you know, what's going out there and what we perceive and just the absolute insanity that goes on behind it. Because I'm coming out behind a newspaper like they won't know it's me. You know, that's the whole deal for me. It's just, you know, I just got to make it look like it's okay. Because I'm going to work, and I go to work on Monday, and people are talking about on the weekend about what they did and how they planted flowers, or they had a barbecue, or they went to the beach. You know, and Larcine, what did you do? Well, if my husband was even home on the weekend, if he was even there on the weekend, and then if he was, you know, then what did we do? You know, was there a drunken brawl that came out of this? Did he lose a truck? Have any of you been truck hunting before? You know, I mean, I think it should be an Al-Anon Olympic event myself. You know, Jesus. How do you lose vehicles that weigh thousands of pounds? I mean, it's not like you can hide them in your pocket or something. You know, it's just. You know, and so I start lying at work. You know, I just go to work on Monday and I just make up the big old story about this fun stuff that we did. You know, and my life becomes a lie because the negative disease of alcoholism, one more time. You know, my life is a lie. I can't even distinct anymore between what's real and what's not real, and it gets progressively worse and it gets progressively worse. And I remember somewhere in all that insanity, I did go to an Al-Anon meeting. A friend of mine had gone to high school and her mom had gotten sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I knew that her dad was going to Al-Anon, and I asked him to take me to a meeting, and he took me to a great meeting, and it was it had an Alano club, and it was upstairs, and they had all the great literature on the table, but they didn't have the piece of literature I wanted, which is how to get them to stop drinking and do what you want them to do. Because see, that's all I'm interested in, you know, because there's nothing wrong with me, you know, and if you're sitting here and there's nothing wrong with you, nobody can help you. That's just all there is to it. I love my friend Karen A. She always says, you know, you think working the 12 steps are hard as an alcoholic, you should try working them when you're perfect. You know, you ought to give it a shot. Yeah. It's a little tough, and that's just how I was, sitting there perfect. Yet when I was sitting in that front row, if they would have said to me, Larcine, do you want your life to be different? God, did I want my life to be different. Just tell me how my life can be different. You know, but I'm not willing to do anything about it because it's not my fault. Big, big deal here, not my fault. It's his fault. You fix him, I'll be okay. You know, so that was kind of like my little Al-Anon career right there. And, you know, so I just go back to the insanity and the craziness and the absolute insanity that goes right along with it. And it just got worse. I remember we were supposed to have this big family reunion, his family reunion. I made him promise to me, you know, that he'd be sober that day. We know months in advance, every day, raise your right hand, you're going to be a good guy. You know, every day he would promise, because I know my husband, every day he meant it. He wanted to be a good guy. He wanted to be there for that event. But one more time, you know, the disease of alcoholism, once he takes the drink, the deal is done. And the event comes up, and there's the day, and guess what? Guess what's going on? Guess who's not sober? Guess who's just as messed up as he's ever been? And I am angry. I am so angry I can't even begin to tell you. Now I'm here to tell you, no matter how drunk, how loaded my husband got, no matter what was going on, he was never abusive to me, never raised a hand to me, never hit the kids, he was never physically abusive with us. But now I'm really angry, so now I'm poking my finger in his chest, and I'm egging him to hit me. Let's just take it to the next level. Let's just go there. Because all I know is I got to keep pushing. I'm pushing in the wrong direction, but I just keep pushing harder and harder and harder. And all of a sudden I became very conscious. And by now we have 2 little boys, and they're 5 and 3 years old, and they're standing on either side of me, and they're yanking on my pant legs, and they're begging me, Mommy, Mommy, please stop yelling at Daddy. And I would like to tell you that I, was aware of what was going on, and something changed for me, but absolutely nothing did. What I started doing was I started yelling at those little boys. How dare they tell me to stop yelling at their father? Their father's the reason our life is the piece of crap that it is today. And by the time I get done screaming at these 2 little boys, I look up at my drunken husband who's walking out the front door, and I, the sober parent, say to the drunken father, where do you think you're going? And the drunken father turns to the sober mom and says, I'm leaving because we're upsetting the children. And I don't tell you this story again because I'm proud of it. I tell you this because this is where the disease of alcoholism took me. And I'm not the person that's drinking. And we become sick too. And I don't even know it. I can't even smile anymore. I can't laugh anymore. Nothing is fun for me anymore. And all the while I think I'm protecting my kids, from their dad, when in reality they never needed protection from their father. They needed protection from their mother, let me tell you. I'd come home and Butch would be passed out on the kitchen floor, and I'd be afraid that he'd OD'd or whatever was going on and freaking out about those kinds of things. But, the boys were always just fine with him. He's on the kitchen floor. Heck, they just pretend he was Gulliver. They tie frickin' Tonka trucks to him, build Tinker Toy bridges over him, just did all that fabulous kind of stuff because they weren't afraid of their dad, but they were afraid of their mom. Let me tell you, they were afraid of their mom, their non-drinking, sober mom. They were just absolutely terrified of that. And again, it's not a story I tell you because I'm proud of it. It's a story I tell you to let you know how I am affected by the disease of alcoholism, how I get to carry that disease on to my children, and I'm not the person that's drinking, because that's how we're affected. Anyway, make a long story short, my husband ended up getting sober on a scale of 1 to 10. I wouldn't give my husband's last drunk a 5. Why? That's the one that got him sober. You know, that's his miracle, not mine. But they had just started this hospital program that I'd heard about, and I gave him the number of this doctor that was on call because he said he needed some help, and I left the room, and this is how I know God was working in his life, because you know I do stuff. I'm a doer. I make the calls, I make all the arrangements, I just do the deal. You know, but I didn't do anything. I just said, here's a number, they got a hospital program here, I don't even know what they do there, but you can call them, and I left the room. And I really believe with all my heart that God literally pushed me out of the way so that my husband could find sobriety. And my husband made arrangements to go in this hospital program, and it was a 21-day deal, but first they had to put him in the psychiatric unit because he'd been taking Valium forever and all the drugs and all the alcohol, and they had to detox him from all of that. And I remember he was in the psychiatric unit, and he's, you know, and I'm leaving, I'm going out through the big double doors, and the guards there letting me out, and I hear Butch go, Larcine, come back, and I was sure it's because he changed his mind and he didn't want to stay, and I walked back to him, and instead he reached into his pocket and he handed me the Valium that he brought in case of emergency. And he'd never parted with the Valium in his life, so I knew something was really going to be different. You know, I went home and I took it because I was just a basket case. I slept for about, 22 hours on 110 milligram Valium, but in my own defense, I was very, very tired. Let me tell you, I was very, very tired. And so anyway, so my husband did the whole detox thing, and then they introduced him to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I am very proud to report to you that was July the 21st, 1979, and from that day to this, he's been sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. And this always makes me cry, and it's not because he got sober, and I am not a crier. I hate Al-Anon because it has wussed me out, but I always am so grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous, not just because you saved the life of a good man, but because you saved a family too. Because I think about if my husband had died, and if you knew the anger and the resentment, the type of person I was at that time. And had my husband died, which is what I was rooting for because I wanted to be a widow very badly at that point. Someone once said to me, why didn't you just divorce him and let him win? I don't think so. And but I think about that person that I was, and that resentment and that anger and that bitterness that I had. And I think about my husband dying, and I think about that woman raising a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I want to ask you what kind of family you think we would have turned out to be. So I am very, very, very grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous. And so my husband started going to AA, and they said I should go to Al-Anon. Well, I had already been to Al-Anon, and you didn't tell me squat Ola. And so I went to my Al-Anon meeting, and I said, you know, I came here 2-3 years ago, asked you how to get my husband sober. You didn't tell me squat. I'm not going to tell you how I got him sober now. Thank you very much. There you go. I'm done. I win. Nanny, nanny, nanny. And because that's a rule of mine, I always win. And so my husband starts going to AA, and I go with him in the beginning to make sure he hears the stuff he's supposed to hear, and because he needs my help. But after 3 months, I'm like, holy crap, there's only 12 steps. How stupid are you? You know, what is taking so long? And he made it clear to me Alcoholics Anonymous was the most important thing in his life. Oh, I love that. And he just kept going to meetings, and he kept doing the deal. And I'm here to tell you, you know, if you're in AA, you know, and your spouse isn't, or your family members aren't in Al-Anon or whatever, you know, please don't give up before the miracle. You know, he just kept working his program, and he just kept bringing it home. He just kept being a program of attraction, no matter how I would yell or scream or whatever. Because, you know, the first 3 months were great of sobriety. I loved it. He was going to work. He's bringing home a paycheck. I could count on him to be there. It was fabulous. But after that, it just started, you know, I was unhappy. I couldn't turn it off. His sobriety did not fix me, and I didn't understand that. Because my whole philosophy of life, all that crap I thought up, when he's sober, I'm going to be okay. When he's a good dad, I'm going to be okay. When he provides for this family, I'm going to be okay. He was doing all those things way beyond any expectations I had, and I couldn't turn it off. All I knew how to do was be pissed. Be angry, be pissed, because the alcoholism, the family disease, a negative disease. He was working on a program showing him the way out. I had no program. I just had all that negative stuff constantly, just over and over and over and over. And with all my being, trying not to be that way, trying to make that go away. I'm here to tell you, I could not do it by myself. And I couldn't do it going to open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous with my husband. As loving and receptive and as kind as AA has always been to me, you know, my recovery does not lie in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not an alcoholic. My recovery lies in the Al-Anon family groups. You know, it's like my friend Crazy Jean says, it's like they get sober and you're out of a job. You know, and there I was. And so anyway, he just kept doing the deal. And what ended up happening is after he was sober for a couple of years, you know, we went to a conference. It was in Palm Springs. He suckered me into going to the family meeting, and that's where, you know, that's where it happened for me, where I became this much willing to do something different. And, you know, there was an AA speaker, an Al-Anon speaker, and an Al-Latin speaker, and it just absolutely, it just changed my life forever at that point. I had no idea that my life was changed forever at that point, because, see, I was just that much willing that day to try something different. So when I started coming to Al-Anon the third time, I started coming for all the right reasons. I didn't come to get an alcoholic sober. He already was. I didn't come to keep him sober. He was doing fine on his own. I came because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And when I came to the meeting, what do? We go to the meetings, we read the literature, we work the steps, you get a sponsor, hallelujah, sign me up, I'm all over it. I got a sponsor right away. You know, I'm amazed that there's people in Al-Anon who don't have a sponsor because they're like looking for somebody just like them. I mean, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Why do you want somebody just like you? Then she knows what you're thinking. Bad, bad, bad idea. You know, so I got a sponsor who was older than my mother, who had a thick Dutch accent. She could hardly understand a bloody word the woman said. She never lived with sobriety. She was divorced from her alcoholic husband, had no children. I mean, we had absolutely almost nothing in common other than we were both female. That was about it. And I remember the first time I used her as a sponsor, my husband had a dead battery, and he asked me to jump it, and I did. And after I did, he ran out of gas. And then what he did is it made him angry, and I used to say he yelled at me. What I know is it just made him angry and he yelled. But he yelled, so I do what I always do when he yells. I yelled right back at him because I don't take no crap from nobody. Another rule I have, just made it up, got to do it. And so anyway, he storms off to work. I go upstairs, call my sponsor, and reported his behavior. And and when I got done, she said, when Butch gets home tonight, you tell him you are sorry for what you said. It was unkind and unnecessary. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, Jeannie missed, you know, the who started it, which I always think is so important. That kind of went right over her head. And she obviously didn't hear all this stuff, you know, so I started telling her the story again because she missed a lot of important information here that I have to say, I'm sorry. And so I started telling her the story a second time, and halfway through the second telling, she says, don't tell me what you just told me. I heard you the first time. And another thing, don't ever call me and start a conversation with Butch said or Butch did. I am not Butch's sponsor. I am Larcine's sponsor. And for what she said and did, it was unkind and unnecessary, and you owe your husband an amends. I'll see you at the meeting tonight. Goodbye. Click. End of conversation. We are done. I learned valuable information. Never call your sponsor first thing in the morning. You got all day long to think about what she told you to do. And never call your sponsor when you'll see her that night at a meeting because she's going to want to know if you followed direction. And I have to. I have no choice. I'm a rule and regulation person. I got to do the deal. So that night at 6 o'clock, my husband walks in the door. I walk right up to him and I tell him I'm sorry I let his shitty attitude affect me the way that it had. And that I would try and do better in the future. Now, I know that's not the best amends you can make today. But I'm here to tell you that was the best amends I could make that day. Because I never ever told him I was sorry for nothing. It was always his fault. It was always his fault. But that day I was this much willing to do something different. And I'm here to tell you if you're new, that's all you need is just this much willingness to get yourself on from that negative path to that positive path. Because that's all it takes, but it just starts out that way. You know, I know when you come in and you're around people and they just seem to be having such a good time and you want what they got, I'm here to tell you, you got to do what they do. You got to go to the meetings. You got to come for some length of time. You got to work the steps. You got to do the deal here. You know, if we could smack you with the Serenity wand, we'd just beat the crap out of you right now and be done with it. You know, but it's easier on you, easier on us. Everybody goes home happy. You know, but the deal is don't mistake happiness, you know, for perfection, because that's not what's going on here. You know, and that's what I thought. I went from having such a crappy life to wanting such a perfect one, that I was missing the good one that was available to me every single solitary day. If I was just willing to accept my humanness, just willing to accept the fact that I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to do things that are wrong, but I'm still going to try and do the best that I can. Turn my will and my life over to the care of a God every day who I can't explain to you, can't define for you, can't point out to you, but I tell you with every fiber of my being, I know exists there for me every single single solitary day and allows me to have a good life if I allow me to have a good life. If I quit making up all the rules that make life so hard on myself and so hard on the people that I love, because I think that's how I can control them. You know, because everything that drives me is really, the bottom line is fear. I'm so scared all the time because, you know, people you love die from this disease. That's the worst that can happen, and it happens every single solitary day. I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't, but it does. But I'm here to tell you that God loves us all and that He wants us to have a good life. And again, it's just God's grace, as you've heard the other speakers talk about today. It's just God's grace. You know, and I have to accept God's grace in my life, and whether or not other people do in theirs is not my business. I just get to love them. I get to be the best mom I know how to be, the best wife I know how to be, and I get to let my family get their job. If they're my son, then I allow them to do the son job. I just get to do the mom job. You know, I get to do the daughter job, not the mother job to my mom. Though that's what I've learned here, and I'm so very, very grateful for it. I'm just going to tell you a couple little things because I want you to know how sick I am all the time, how important this program is for me. When I was 15 years in Al-Anon, my youngest son was then 19 years old, having a lot of problems with drugs and alcohol. I was very concerned for this child, and I'd been to a conference over the weekend, and they had all these fabulous speakers, fabulous workshops, so much fun. And you know how you come home from that, and like serenity's like coming out of every orifice of your body. You know, you come in, oh, I'm just so full of the program and the love and the da. And that's just the Sunday I came home feeling that way. And in my garage I have a treadmill. That's what I used to do for exercise. And so I go get into my exercise clothes and go walk on my treadmill. And next to my treadmill is my son's weight bench. And I walk in there, and on his weight bench is a woman's driver's license. It's sitting there on that bench. And I look at it. There's a lot of information. I love information. Okay, this woman lives in Glendora, California, 32 years old. But I immediately decide in 10 seconds or less, information from nowhere lands here, becomes fact for me. She's been in the house over the weekend, had sex with my 19-year-old son, has 2 kids, wants to marry him and call me mom. I am there right now. I am just right now. I run into the house. My husband's on the couch. I show him the driver's license. Nothing, because the man has no imagination whatsoever. You know, I tell him what I think happened over the weekend. His eyes roll back in his forehead. You know, he's like, you know, and stuff. Call Carol, you whack job. You know, Carol's my sponsor now. And so I call Carol. Carol agrees with my husband. I'm a whack job. And Carol rarely gives me direction. But that day she told me, shut up. Shut up, and don't you dare dump on that kid the garbage you made up in your head. I know you're worried about the stuff that's going on in his life, but let me tell you, Larcine, it takes just as much energy to send positive thoughts someone's way as it does negative. Which path do you want to be on? If he's in trouble, then you just need to pray for him. You just need to pray. You need to love him unconditionally. Please don't underestimate the power of unconditional love and really what it means. It doesn't mean you have to accept bad behavior. It doesn't mean you have to go places you don't want to go. But you love somebody, you love them. And nothing can change that. And that's the power of love. And so anyway, as it turns out, I don't see my son for a couple of days. His school schedule, my work schedule, and 2 days later he walks in the kitchen. Now, I've forgotten about the driver's license. It's been 2 days. Many episodes have come and gone in this whack job head. And he walks in with the driver's license, and he says, Mom, what do you do when you find a driver's license? Well, I don't tell him what I do when I find a driver's license, because it's a very bad example. But one more time, left to my own devices, you know, I will go, you know, at this, you know, going to Al-Anon, going to meetings, sponsoring people, doing it. How come you keep doing it, Larcine? Because 10 seconds alone in the garage is why I keep doing it. Because left to my own devices, I will go to the dark side every flaming time. I don't know why. I don't know when that goes away, if it'll ever go away. What I know is I have resources here. I have a sponsor, and I have friends, and I have a home group, and I have literature to go to that helps me separate that garbage from what's fact. A sponsor that will say, who told you that? Well, I just made it up by myself. Okay, well then let's just put it right back there where you got it. And, you know, again, one more time, so I have an opportunity to have a good life. 3 years ago, I found out I was going to be a grandmother. I'm thrilled beyond belief. I've been waiting to be a grandmother for a very long time. It turns out this baby is going to be born in May. As it turns out, I have a commitment every single weekend in May. And I made a rule on the spot. I must be present when the baby is born. Again, I don't know why I make this crap up. I just do. It just, boom, I got to be there. So my husband says, you might want to try and get out of these commitments. You know, if you want to be here just in case, you know. Now the alcoholic, Mr. Voice of Reason all of a sudden, you know, over here. And I'm like, well, you know, these are commitments that I'm not going to break my commitments because these are important commitments, but, you know, I'll take care of it. How are you going to take care of it? I got a plan. And so I go to God. I go, God, the baby can't be born on the weekend. And God does this to me. you know, because I'm of service for Pete Criminy sakes. I don't ask God for very much, a little weenie request for all the service I give. I'm sorry, I don't think that's too much. You know, mind you, what am I, 23 years in Al-Anon at this point, going to meetings, doing the deal, as wacky as I can be any given time. I thought about running this past my sponsor. I thought about running it past my home group, but you know what party poopers they are when you come up with a good idea. So I just kind of did the God and I got a deal going here. And as it turns out, I'm checking off these. The weekends are going by. No baby, no baby, no baby. Last weekend, and I'm in South Dakota, the plane lands, and my husband calls me, and the baby has been born. This baby just had to wait just another 36 flaming freaking hours, you know. But no. Could God give me that? No. I am pissed beyond mortal belief. I am at this conference. They're so happy to have me. I hate their flaming guts, you know. I'm just... So, but I have tools here. You guys gave them to me. Okay, excuse me. I go outside, call my sponsor. I start screaming, yelling, this isn't fair. When do you get to be there for your family? Blah, 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 blah. And then my sponsor, I'll never forget this. I am upset. I am angry. I am livid. And she goes, I'll have to call you back. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And so I don't know, 2 seconds later the phone rings. Now I don't know how it is in Houston, Texas, but in Southern California, when your sponsor calls you, you've crossed the line, boy. You're in trouble. You're going to be writing some stuff, let me tell you. And so I answer the phone, and here's my sponsor, and what I know happened, and Carol will tell me today, you flipped me out. I couldn't believe it, so I called my sponsor, because that's what we do here, you know, and so Charlotte said, I'll call her, so Charlotte calls me on the phone, and now I take the opposite tack. I'm not going to start yelling and screaming at Charlotte. Now I go, oh, Charlotte, the baby's born, I really wanted to be there, and da-da-da-da-da. And then Charlotte, and I don't ever mean to say that I've been sponsored meanly, I have not. I've been sponsored honestly by people who love me and care about me, and she just said to me, Larcine, did you turn your will and your life over to the care of God today? Yes, I did. Then you know you are exactly where you are supposed to be, doing exactly what it is you're supposed to be doing. And another thing, a beautiful, wonderful thing happened. You became a grandmother today, and you have a healthy grandson, and your daughter-in-law's doing fine, and your son's so happy, and your other son and your husband are giving you a blow-by-blow description of everything that's going on, and you want to take this absolutely wonderful thing that happened and turn it into a piece of crap because it didn't happen the way you wanted it to be. The stupid rule and regulation you made up about how this baby had to be born. You know, and it's just like, thank you. Thank you one more time, because without that, without making that call and doing that deal, I could have taken one more time that negative road that I just had this tenacity for some reason to go down, that I pick up the phone and use the tool so that you guys can put me on the path that reminds me a beautiful, wonderful thing happened here today. And it is special beyond belief. And so she told me, change your rule. So I figured out when my plane got back, if I see the baby now within the first 48 hours that it's born. Because that's what it's all about here. It's what it's all about. Be a little flexible. You know, when I lead a meeting, my topic is what stick is up your butt. Because, I mean, you know, I got told early on, if you stay rigid, you will break. You know, and that's just how it is for me. I just don't want to be rigid like that. I want to be able to be flexible. I want for it to be okay. One more chance. Do I want a perfect life? Because that's what you do when you're making all these rules and regulations. That's what I do. I'm trying to make a perfect life. When in reality, I have a good life, if I'll just let it be a good life. You know, and that's the gift that you guys have given me. Just to bring you up to speed, my husband has been really sick the last a little over 3 years. He's had hepatitis C. He's had it for a long time, but it turned into cirrhosis 3 years ago when he had to go through interferon. He's done that for a year, then he did it for a year and a half, and then a week ago last Saturday we found out it was back again, and now they can't treat him with the interferon because it's beat him up so bad. Again, I don't know where we're supposed to go with this or what the heck is supposed to happen with this. I just know I got a God who lets us have a good life today. Puts lots of just, you know, I mean, this could be a negative deal for us, but it's not. And he's not in fear, and neither am I, because we have you guys and the love and the support and this keeping us on the positive path about, you know what, it's going to be okay. You know, he had to give him shots. Every week he had to give himself a shot. You know, and one more time. You know, who knew that his making a shot at a heroin addict was going to come in so handy, you know, for this? You know, because he doesn't want me to give him the shots. I don't know why. He just doesn't really feel comfortable with me giving him a shot. But, you know, one more time, you can look at the negative or you can look at the positive. And it's difficult, and I'm not sure exactly where we're all going to go, but we're examining the alternatives and the things that are available to us. And I know that God's walking with us through whatever path that we have to walk through, and we're not alone. And I can't tell you how much that has meant to both him and I. and I know that, you know, we got another shot at a good life. We got another grandbaby coming in March, of which I have no commitments. Hey, because you can learn here and you can be flexible here. So I have a little wooden candle that I keep in my kitchen, and it's just a little wooden statue, and it says, "A candle loses nothing of its light by lighting another candle." I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for lighting my candle. Thanks for having me.